Hello again. I'm sorry you've got so much of me right now. It's just the way it's worked out. And doing that name dropping on a Sunday morning, if you didn't hear the name drop, forget about it. But it did remind me of the visit I made to Uganda. And I suddenly started to reflect that I went to Uganda at a time when there was a virus that was causing real panic and a global pandemic had been announced. And it was the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And at that point, people had very little idea of what was going on, very little idea of what to do about it. And Uganda was one of the first places where HIV became really, really prevalent. And so we went to make a film about how the church was responding to that. And just looking back at my notes about that, I realised that there were things that I learnt then that are relevant to what's been happening to us. That virus had similarities and some differences, as you'll see. One of the places we went to was Kampala Baptist Church. Always good to go to a Baptist church, right in the centre of Kampala. Pastor's name was John, and he said that when he first realised that HIV/AIDS was prevalent, that many in his own congregation must have AIDS, he went through a period of a few weeks when he felt unable to shake hands at the door as people left the church. He was afraid that he would catch the disease from that, even though he knew technically you couldn't do it that way. Things are a bit different with this particular virus we have now. Then he said to me, I remembered that Jesus had reached out and touched the person with leprosy. And I realized as a follower of Jesus, I must share his compassion. So he began a process in the church of really trying to take care of people with AIDS. At that point, churches were often turning people away. They were assumed to have been sexually unclean and therefore not acceptable. But John did the opposite to that. He started welcoming people there. And we went to video a group at Kampala Baptist Church that morning. They met in a little prayer chapel. And I was suddenly aware I'd never met anybody with AIDS at that point. I thought about the theology and I thought about the principles of it. I've been worried about the way some people in the church were judging those who had got AIDS. And here we were going to meet these women. And some of these women were women whose only reason they got AIDS because their husband had been unfaithful to them, and brought AIDS back and left them with AIDS after the husband had died. And as we got round the corner of the church building to go to the little chapel where they were meeting, they were singing, and I suddenly realised they were singing, God is so good, he's so good to me. And I just tried to work out whether I'd be able to sing something like that if my spouse had died and all they'd left me with was a killer disease. So that was part of it. And we met that group, we filmed them, we talked to them. They gave the stories of what had happened to them. It was a very moving experience. And just as we finished, one of the young people there said to me, we started to talk about the family and said, have you got children? I said, yes, I've got two daughters. And one of them's called Catherine. And she said, oh, my name's Catherine. Could I write to your daughter? And I said, yeah, that's fine. Not thinking she'd land me in it because she wrote to Catherine that night. So my daughter, when I got back home, was a bit puzzled as to why a total stranger could write to her from Uganda when her own father always said it was not worth it because the letter would never get there in time. So I was really in trouble. Anyway, I asked my Catherine if I could read the letter that had come from the Catherine in Uganda. I hope you're following this okay. And this is what the letter said. I'm a born-again Christian and I help with the AIDS ministry of my church. I don't have AIDS, but I just wanted to serve God for this time, really. I'm on a 6-month long vacation from junior high school after O-levels, which is ending in June. My brother asked me before the vacation began whether I'd like to work with the AIDS ministry. I said yes, why not? But inside me, I was honestly scared. Very soon vacation began. The day before I began working, I just couldn't settle, till I got on my knees and cried before God. I told him, God, listen to this. Whatever the case may be, you see, I'm quite scared of getting involved with people with AIDS, but I've made up my mind that I'll be a sacrifice to you, O God, with my spirit broken and contrite. I ask the Spirit to empower me to be the best I can to these people. Right now I'm used to them. I've learned from them and they say they have learned from me. Though there are times which are bad, I'm able to cry with them, laugh with them, and do things together for the glory of God. For the next few years, I read that letter out loud in many churches that I went round and spoke about what was happening. And I realised every time I read it that a teenager, a Ugandan teenager, knew more about what it meant to follow Jesus than perhaps I'll ever discover. She'd realised that whatever her fears were, she could conquer them and do things and work for him in a way that made a real difference. I'm so glad I've met people who've been able to do things together for the glory of God. What a brilliant definition of what it means to be part of the church.